In today's show, we discuss, has the British monarchy had its day?
And now, the TNT Talk Show, daring to go where other podcasts fear to tread.
Hello, I'm Tony Fasula, and I share the stage with my esteemed friend and colleague, Tayo Boya. Tayo, hello, my friend. I hope you're keeping safe and well.
Yeah, what the hell, Tony? What you gonna do, eh?
Now, before you come in with some crazy story that upsets me and the audience, can I just ask you first off, can you just say hi to our audience?
Another funny thing. No, I will say hi, but you know the funny thing?
Go on.
You forgot to ask me last week.
Did I?
I laughed my head off all through the show. And I had my fingers crossed. Anyway.
Go on.
Yeah, hi audience. I've got something for not just you, Tony, but for the audience. I've got something. And it's a little puzzle I've been working on all week, and I still haven't solved it. You know guide dogs, right?
Yeah.
Who cleans up after a guide dog?
Gosh, that's a really that's a really good thing, actually. I don't know. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. There must be someone out there with an answer to that. I don't know, but very good question. Quite a conundrum, but okay. Anyway, let's move forward with the topic of our show. And it is, has the British monarchy had its day? Now, I don't know whether you want to start or do you want me to start, because it was one of mine, actually.
Well, why don't you start as it was one of yours?
Okay. Well, obviously we know the monarchy. We've celebrated the Queen, and she's been on the throne for 70 years, which is unprecedented. And to be honest, she has done a good job. But is it time now where, when she finally stands down or abdicates or whatever it may be, that we say that's that? We don't have any more royalty? Do we really need them because of the expense that's needed to fund it? And it's taxpayer expense after all. So I'm raising the question. We recognize the fact that the Queen, Her Majesty, has done 70 glorious years on the throne. So we're not belittling that in any way. But should we now draw a line under that and end it there?
The first thing I would say is, anyone who doesn't want to give Prince Charles a fair crack at the whip is just a heartless so-and-so. This poor SOB has been standing in the sidelines his entire life, waiting for this woman to step down so that he can step up to the plate. And when it finally comes to be his turn, what do you guys want to do? Nah, forget about it. Come on, have a heart. Even if you're going to, what is it now? If you're going to stop whatever the expression is, you're going to end the monarchy. Give the guy a break, man. Come on. I mean, have a heart, man. You accuse me of being heartless? Come on. No. I mean, just for the sake of Charles, I'm like absolutely flipping not. He's been patient. He's been a good son. He hasn't gone off and done weird things in America. I mean, what the hell? I mean, okay, he had an affair, Princess Diana. Yeah, water under the bridge. Just let the poor boy have his boy. He's older than me. Let the poor guy have his crack at the whip. Now, come on.
But okay,
let's do the coronation. As I've written something about regnal names. You know what a regnal name is?
No.
A regnal name is the name under which a monarch rules, not the birth name. So Her Majesty's regnal name is Elizabeth II.
Yeah.
Kings and queens have monarchs, basically. Kings and queens have got regnal names, and popes.
Okay.
So our Pope is, well, I don't know ours, but our current Pope, the current Pope, Pope Francis, his regnal name is quite weird because his regnal name is Francis.
Oh, okay.
Rather than Francis I. Even though he is Francis I, for some reason, he's just chosen Francis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they were, and I was writing about Prince Charles and what his regnal names could be, because it's generally formed from his birth names in general. I mean, it's not a must. It's just traditionally the given names. You know, when royals are named, they've got like 8, 9, 10 names, 4 names, and some kind of combination of those becomes the regnal name.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
and he would be what I would like him to be. I don't think he's going to be, but what I'd love him to be is, guess what? Arthur II, because he's also Arthur.
Arthur II.
Yeah, I think that'd be nice, King Arthur II.
Okay. Now, it is a question to you and our listening audience as well. If he would have been a good king, do you not think that the Queen would have actually stepped down before now? Because Charles is 73. I mean, come on. I mean, surely she must maybe not have as much faith in him to lead as you currently do. Because why wait into your 90s before you step down and hand the reins to someone else, for instance? Why has she waited as long as she has? Is it because the succession, that's a topic in itself, the succession after her, she doesn't value, she doesn't believe that Charles possibly is going to make a good king?
I think we have some anecdotal information. I won't characterize it as we have anecdotal evidence. I won't call it evidence, but we have anecdotal information that the horrors she and her family suffered, when I say her family, I mean her mother and father and she herself and her siblings suffered when her uncle stepped down and abdicated, is something that she has a horror of. So she has a horror of abdication. Okay. And this is what we've been told, that it's not that she's got anything against Charles, although I think it is true to say that she would have preferred Anne to have taken over.
Yes.
But for all that, it's not as if she's got something against Charles, but she's just got something against abdication. She just feels that it's not the duty of a monarch to abdicate. Having seen what it did, she feels it's wrong.
Could you elaborate a little bit for maybe some of our listeners that are a bit further afield and not aware of the turmoil that it actually caused? Do you know a bit more about that?
Well, yes. King Edward, her uncle, fell in love with an American divorcee called Mrs. Simpson.
Yeah.
And at the time, people were not prepared to, the British people, apparently, according to Churchill anyway, who was prime minister at the time, said that absolutely no way would the British people accept an American divorcee as the Queen or even the consort. And so Edward decided to abdicate, to give up the throne. Yeah. And he gave a famous speech in which you remember is that I cannot conceive of being your monarch if I'm not allowed to be with the woman that I love. And I think the feeling was his, again, anecdotal information, not anecdotal evidence, is that he didn't expect to be ousted from British society quite as thoroughly as he was. He thought, yes, I won't be king, but it's okay. I'll still be a royal. I'll still be a royal. I'll still be in Britain. I still have my place. And he was going to support his younger brother. He wasn't going to work against his younger brother. So he was going to be part and parcel of the establishment with this woman by his side, just that he wouldn't be Your Majesty, that's all. And he felt, I can do that. That's not a problem. And what happened was that was actually was basically exiled.
Yeah, he was, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was basically exiled.
But how did that negatively affect Her Majesty the Queen?
Well, she was never going to be queen. She was just going to be an ordinary princess, just happy-go-lucky, live her life, do what she wants to do, and she would have had something to do, it seems. It turns out she loved horses And believe it or not, she loved cars.
Yeah, she did. I've heard this as well. Yeah, she likes cars.
She likes cars, and she knows how to fix cars, believe it or not. Because she trained in the Second World War. She trained with the mechanics, the army mechanics or whatever.
But that was to be an ambulance driver.
Well, they had to train her to fix the engines and everything, which is what she excelled at, apparently.
Yeah.
And she loved that. And she sort of, anecdotal information, really blames her Uncle Bertie for, because to him, King Edward was her Uncle Bertie. Blames him also blames him for killing her father, because she says that it was the stress and strain of unexpectedly becoming the monarch that killed this very gentle person, her father, who, if you remember, had this stutter, because there's a film about it too.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
Oh, The King's Speech. There's a film about King, now what was his name?
Oh, gosh.
Yes, her father.
Yeah.
I forget his name now. Anyway, his problem, the stutter, that he had a coach, and the film was about how this person coached him so that he didn't stutter when he gave speeches.
Yeah.
But it was a very stressful, he had
George VI, isn't it? King George VI is a Queen's father, wasn't it?
Yes, he had a short reign. So I'm sorry to say that I know Edward II because of the controversy, and I know Elizabeth too because she's been my monarch all my life. So unfortunately, George VI kind of fades from memory.
Yeah,
and she blames him for the death
for very long. Yeah.
No, she blames him for the death of her father. She blames the abdication for the death of her father. Possibly why she never forgave her uncle.
Okay, I mean that aside, we were talking about Charles and the succession and all this.
Yes, and your unfortunate and really stone-hearted efforts to prevent the poor man from.
How do we know that Charles has got aspirations to be the king? I mean, we don't, do we?
Well, if you don't want to be king, you just say so. No one's going to draw a knife across your throat.
No, but I think he knows it's his duty because he's next in line. Mm-hmm. But does he? Because you know what Charles is like. Charles actually likes spending time with the countryside and things like this, rather than being head of state, so to speak. So does he really want to take up that role, or is it because he feels it's duty to the nation? But I mean, that doesn't answer my question in so much that should we draw a line in the sand and say, No,
I mean, absolutely not. I mean, first of all, you made a terrible mistake. You claimed that the monarchy costs us a lot of money. Now, people have studied this, and it turns out that actually a presidency costs a lot more. Are you aware that every time Donald Trump, for instance, went to Margo or Key Largo, whatever they call this place, every time he went there, it cost American taxpayers between $1 and $3 million. Right? Mar-a-Lago, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And do you know that the French president Macron, yes, and this is 2021, cost the French taxpayer £103.5 million. It's converted into pounds sterling.
What, for his presidency?
Yes, for his presidency.
Okay.
The trappings.
But you're not comparing apples with apples, are you?
Because well, if we don't have a monarch who's our head of state, then we'll have a head of state who won't be the prime minister, because the prime minister is the head of the government. He's not head of state.
No, that's right.
All right. So we can then expect that with all the trappings of a president and everything, he will actually cost us more than the monarchy. So all I'm trying to say is don't use the expense of the monarchy as an excuse. It's actually a bargain.
You believe it's a bargain?
Well, I believe there's lots of things. That's one of many, many things.
You quoted 100 and what was it for Macron?
103.5 million.
Do you know how much the UK monarchy receives from taxpayers?
No.
about 300 million
Per what?
per year.
300 million per year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for everybody though, isn't it?
Well, that doesn't matter. Okay. In that case, then you
That's
just
for the whole damn
come on to
family,
one
yeah.
of my other arguments, which is maybe there's too many of them. Maybe they shouldn't be all funded by the taxpayer. Maybe the monarchy should be shrunk, so the costs are only for a few key, members of the royal family. I mean, why do some of the lesser members, in quotes, I don't want to be disingenuous, but you know what I mean by that, be paid for being in the monarchy? Surely, if we're going to pay for the Queen, then fine, we accept that. She's the head of state. We pay for her and any succession and her immediate family, as would somebody who could become king or queen. But should you really be funding some of the other royals, who are never in line for the throne, really, but they're still getting some income from the taxpayer? This is the thing that I'm unsure about.
Well, I wonder what figure you quoted, because I'm looking at an article from the Telegraph. Now it's going back a little bit. It's going back all the way to 2016, and it's Queen's birthday. This is the title because that's easier for people to search on the internet for a title than it is if I read out a very weird URL, correct?
Mm-hmm.
It's Queen's birthday, : how much does Elizabeth II cost compared to other European monarchs? And it says, while it is often reported that Her Majesty the Queen costs each person only 56 pence a year, the cost of a monarchy per taxpayer is a lot higher. So I was wondering if you were talking about the crown as opposed to the monarchy, because they're two different estates, by the way.
Well, yeah, I suppose they are, but I'm talking about the
300
overall
million,
cost. Yeah,
well, it's 40 million apparently for the monarchy. 40
I
million.
thought it was higher than that. It's about 87 to 90 million.
Isn't that interesting? Whatever it is, 90 or 40, because this independent, the article I'm reading from says 40. This was 2016. If it was jumped up to 90, it is still less than 103.
Well, that's because that they don't fund everything from that income. This is just for the people in the monarchy. But then you've got all the estates that need to be funded, and that's
where that's British property. That's not Her Majesty's property. That's not the monarch's property. That's not.
Well, I would beg to differ, surely, because she's the one that has her name on it, and no one else can use it. So
she's holding it. Actually, there's all been thought of very carefully. She's holding it in trust for the British people. It's not hers. She can't sell it.
Okay.
She can't suddenly decide, you know what, I'd really love to have, I don't know, a garden like they have at Versailles in Paris in France. I'd really love a garden like that, and then just sign off on it. She actually has to go to the Prime Minister to ask if the British people will give her permission to build that garden.
I would love to know, actually, on a side note, but along similar lines, whether or not these sorts of communications have happened throughout the years, and if any have actually been turned down. I would discover, or probably believe, that not a single one has, if the Queen has indeed gone to the government to request this sort of thing. Or is it because she already has a considerable fund allocated, she then manages that fund accordingly?
Some of it she can allocate and manage accordingly, but if there's something out of extraordinary, some new thing. I mean, the fund she's given is for the upkeep of the place. It's not for going off and splashing out and doing what she wants to do. It's for the upkeep of these estates and these property and these whatever it is.
You're talking the 300 million now.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
It doesn't go to her; it goes to the monarchy and all the people around.
It's not hers. for example, Buckingham Palace caught fire. Do you remember when there was a fire at Buckingham Palace?
Hmm.
A lot of people. Do you remember? It was in the 80s, I believe.
It was, yes. I think, was it
Right?
Buckingham Palace? It was one of the places. I can't
I
remember
think
if it was the palace itself.
Yeah, it was the palace. That's right, Buckingham Palace. They
Right.
caught fire. And everyone was like, well, why are we paying? You know, she ought to pay. It's a proper, why are we paying? So, excuse me. She lives there, but it's not her property. Just like she's a tenant, basically. And there was
Okay.
just so much kerfuffle and so much hassle that Her Majesty just said, you know what, naff it, I'll pay. But I mean, honestly, it's like, guys, I'm actually a tenant here.
But then there's your problem. You see,
belongs to Britain.
This is the different way of using the word tenant, actually, because a tenant normally pays back, but we're paying her to stay there. Now, granted, she brings her
Majesty.
her majesty. She brings the fact that she is the queen and head of state. So you're going to get visitors to come and look at all the paraphernalia. I get that, but has there been a cost benefit ever done to see, is it worth continuing with these large sums? And I know you say she's holding the money for the estate and making sure that the estate is being looked after, but we can't use that estate. That estate is all segregated for the royalty. So even though you say it belongs to the people, it's not like, you and I, for instance, hey, let's hire a few areas in one of the palaces for the weekend. It's not like at our disposal. It's just earmarked for the monarchy. So we even have to pay to go and look around those places. So it's not like, okay, we're funding the monarchy so she keeps the upkeep of those buildings and then those buildings are free for tours and sightseeing. No, you still have to pay to go and visit these places. So I think there's a little bit weak link there to say that we, the people, they're in trust of the royals for us. I think that's a little bit weak, in my opinion.
Well, they're like the crown jewels. The crown jewels don't belong to Her Majesty the Queen. The crown jewels belong to the people of Great Britain. Oh, Great Britain and Northern Ireland, then, if you want. Basically, the crown jewels.
United Kingdom.
As you know, I was going to say, basically, the United Kingdom, right?
Yeah.
Now, just because they belong to the United Kingdom doesn't mean that Tony, who's going swanning off to one of his soirees in downtown London, can just sort of drive up to the tower and say, look, listen, I'm one of the people. Let me have those jewels that belong to me for the night. Obviously not. No, that's not how. That's not how it works. She is looking after this for us, and if push comes to shove, if we need to extract wealth from these estates by selling them for whatever, then all her years of sterling service and looking after them and managing them, these properties for us properly, will then show up in the value that we can get. She is basically a caretaker for them, so she's doing her job. That's all.
Okay. I mean, she has done a terrific job to represent our country, home and abroad.
That's not all. That's not all. There are all sorts of reasons. There's 7, 8 good reasons why we should keep our monarchy. Having a monarch ought to, and I think there's good evidence, and this time I am using the word evidence, ought to unite the people. You see, there's a difference between a political head and a monarch. A political head is not the head of the country. I mean, we call him the head of the country, but actually, guess what? When you think about it, Boris Johnson is actually the head of the Tory party, and the Tory party happens to be in power.
Yes.
He's not really the head of all the people who voted Lib Dem or
Conservative. No.
Exactly.
He's not even head of the people that voted Conservative because they voted for their MP. They didn't vote for him specifically.
Right. That's right. But he's the head of the government. Yes, we agree. He's the executive. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't represent United Kingdom. When you want somebody who represents the United Kingdom, you're talking about Her Majesty the Queen. And she represents us. That is, she is our interface with the rest of the world. Now, politically, she doesn't have that kind of power, but the gravitas is ours. So an affront to Her Majesty is an affront to all of us, because that's us.
Mm-hmm. The symbolism of it is
the
powerful.
symbolism of it. The symbolism of it. And when she travels abroad and says things and everything, and the way she is received, it's all the people of the United Kingdom who bask in that reflected glory and majesty. So she is a figurehead, but more than a figurehead, she's a political figurehead. She's not a figurehead in the sense of the Diamond Jubilee and the flowers coming out and the celebrations. And actually, isn't today Her Majesty's birthday?
Today?
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't know.
Hang on, I'm looking at was it yesterday or today? No, it's today.
Okay.
Queen's birthday.
Ooh,
Now, this, I believe, is her official birthday, because she has two birthdays. She's got a birthday in April, which is the day on which she was born. And for reasons that are too opaque to me for me to understand, she has another birthday, which is when the country celebrates her birthday. And it's today.
Okay.
If you look in your dictionary, you'll see that today is the Queen's birthday. So happy birthday, Your Majesty.
Happy birthday, Your Majesty, for today. Yes. Absolutely.
That's That's the good thing about having a monarch, is that she's above party politics, and that's why we don't want to see any member of the royal family, anyone, especially Her Majesty, but not just Her Majesty. Absolutely no one from the royal family ought to have anything whatsoever to do with politics. Must stay above it.
Okay, but, and here's a big but. Look at what's happening here at the present time. Her children, Her Majesty, for me personally, happy with Her Majesty. She's been absolutely phenomenal throughout her tenure. So I don't have a problem with her. And certain individuals within the royal family also have kept that extremely high standard. However, there are a number who unfortunately have let the position, I suppose, get the better of them, and they haven't acted in the best interests of the country, considering they are the stewards of the country. And Charles himself didn't actually, he met a beautiful woman who ended up being the princess and the darling of the monarchy, only to, as we now know, he treated her quite poorly. And then we know what happened to Diana, early death, not based on Charles, but because she became such a loved figure, everybody wanted a piece of her. And unfortunately, it ended up in her demise, which we've already touched on in previous shows. But Charles himself, his younger brother, Andrew, as we know, have gone through really bad press, in quotes, which obviously affects the royal family. And this is part of the problem, because they're a collective, a big collective. When one falls foul, it tarnishes the good name that the Queen has developed over all these years. And so that's an issue there. That's why I'm for either shrinking the monarchy to only a select few, but having them to account. And if you're representing the country in such a manner, then you have to be accountable by the fact that you could lose that position based on misdemeanors that you practice, that the public would then have not a vote on, but would have a say on, that maybe they're not happy with that. So like in the case of Andrew, should he be stripped of his HRH because of the bad things that clearly he's done? And
that's going too far. He was never convicted of anything in the court of law. So I definitely won't stand for anybody saying that he did it. And there were certainly
What's your view, as a side note here? You're going to court, you're being accused, and because you have the funds, you pay your way out of it going to court. You settle before the court.
This would be on his lawyer's advice. He didn't want to settle. He fought tooth and nail to not settle. He fought, and who said so? His ex-wife, Fergie, who stood by him all this time. And for your information, the day that the accuser said that he did this and that to her, there's a picture of him with his I believe they're two daughters in a hamburger place, celebrating one of the daughters' birthdays. But they just felt that if they went to court, the stories and things and ancillary stuff, whatever, I don't know what the details are. I wasn't in the room. So on the advice of the lawyers and against his personal wishes, probably some pressure from Her Majesty, but again, I wasn't in the room. I have no idea if this is true or not. He paid, or they paid for him, or whatever. So this is why I have this very black and white, no nonsense attitude that I never take advice on things like this, and I care less, what the collateral damage would be, because when you, as you've just alluded to yourself now, when you pay up, it gives that veneer of guilt. And it's only when you stand up and you say, absolutely, to the day I die, this did not happen, then people go, well, all right, maybe, but so I think that he should have stuck to his guns and should never, ever, ever have settled. And now, by the way, the accuser is now herself being accused.
By whom?
By another woman, believe it or not, not a man, by a woman, of sexual harassment.
Really?
Really?
That's
so, yeah, I know.
A separate topic.
That's a separate topic. But there you go. Anyway, yes, it's Her Majesty. The monarch rules by the grace of God, not by plenary votes of the voters. So you can't say, we will vote you out. That's not how it happens. How it happens in a constitutional monarchy is that the head of government will advise in inverted commas, will advise the monarch that they are so compromised that the grace of God is not with that monarch.
How would somebody say that, and how would they know?
Well, if Boris Johnson decides that people hate this monarch so much that the monarchy is going to fall, if the monarch doesn't step down, he will go to the palace and say, Your Majesty, I'm sorry to have to inform you that it would appear that the grace that God has removed his grace from thee, or something like that. And basically, it's called advice. He's advising her. He's telling her, you might not know this, Your Majesty, but the people hate your guts. So I'm sure, you prefer it for the sake of the monarch, of the land that you've come to love and everything, and you just want to protect, to step aside. Okay. And that's how they do it. That's how it's done.
Okay. So she's ruling by the grace of God, which is fine. But if God is upset, someone would have to tell her.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. These traditions are rather strange to me. Indeed. And it does lead to a very difficult set of questions there as to who decides God's will. But okay.
Well, like I said, it's the political thing. So if Her Majesty is not going to, and Charles is unlikely to, but if it turns out that young William has been doing unspeakable things, then obviously someone would be advised, his father, when he eventually hopefully becomes king, he would be advised that Prince William is not suitable.
Okay.
And then, just very stern, very harsh, very bold, terse, stark, all these expressions, statements will be made that the monarch has decided the succession will be this. And believe me, that's that. When the monarch says it, that's that. He's got no recourse whatsoever. There's no court you can go to. There's nobody you can turn to.
This is what I don't understand. We are a democracy and the Queen is the head of state with no political powers. But however, there are certain functions that she still has the power
absolutely
to implement, which seems rather going against the grain of the whole point of the democracy.
No, those are her powers. The powers in this democracy, she has powers and responsibilities, and those are her powers. It was, that's what she can do by virtue of her office.
Yeah, you see, the disadvantage of a monarchy, okay, not in the case in the Queen as well, is that you could actually end up in a situation where a minor would be head of country. There could be
Yes, but
scenarios
then
that
there would
happen.
always be a what do they call them? The people who rule in the place of the minor. There's a word for it.
Is there?
Yeah. It's a very well known word. It just escaped me for a minute. It's not the guardian.
I don't know.
It's not a guardian. It's the person who rules on behalf of the monarch. Catherine was like that, wasn't it? Catherine of Spain. She ruled on behalf of the monarch. And a lot of the when there was a Chinese emperor, they seldom made it into adulthood.
Okay.
Because whoever was ruling on their behalf would see to it that they died, basically, at a young age. That was the name. You rule in someone's stead in their name.
Don't know. Have a think of that one. It'll come to you. It'll come to you
eventually. And anyway, so the other thing we do is that we have a constitutional monarchy. And let's have a look at remember the Arab Spring of a few years ago? The kerfuffle? Isn't it odd that in 3 countries where they had constitutional monarchs, Morocco, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, they didn't have all that trouble. It was always in the republics. Now think about that.
Really?
Countries, yes, really. Well, no problem in Morocco, no problem in Jordan, and no problem in Saudi Arabia. Very few problems anywhere else in the Gulf states.
But the Arab Spring really only affected 3 countries. Let's be honest.
They're not constitutional monarchs. No.
Yeah, but that only affected. I mean, obviously we're digressing slightly, but that only affected
Algeria. Libya had its own issues, wasn't it?
Yeah, but they were already Libya in particular.
Tunisia, Egypt.
They were already in turmoil. They weren't long-term governments. Yemen are having a civil war and a fight.
No, it started afterwards, didn't it? It started afterwards. Right? And again, when did the problem start in Syria?
Well,
2014?
That was Assad, actually, wasn't it? Where he was attacking the insurgents in his own country.
Yeah, no, but the insurgents started off first. I remember, because where was that? I think it must have been earlier. Because it
wasn't part of the Arab Spring where the people wanted their say, and in Syria's case, the uprising wanted to get rid of Assad.
Yes, exactly.
And instead of doing the will of the people and stepping aside, he persecuted, gassed them, and did all sorts of them to suppress the uprising.
I'm going to go as far as gassed them. I don't know if he did or didn't. I'm not saying he didn't. I just don't know about it. But it was who was prompting it. And it was our usual suspects from all the way across the Atlantic.
Did the Arab Spring start? Where did that start from? What? We were digressing here a little bit.
The usual suspects.
Right. You believe that was the case?
It's not a question that I believe. I don't know who says it wasn't the usual suspects. The color revolutions, all this started with these people meddling in the affairs of other people's countries, which they continue to do to this very day. Anyway, my point being, the constitutional monarchy means stability. This is my point, that our stability will come from having a center which is different to or different from. I hate prepositions, as I say every week.
Different from.
All right, different from having a political center of gravity in the country. So it tends to be. It's not a guarantee.
I know it's not a guarantee, because when the UK have made mistakes politically around the world, aligning themselves with certain people, even the royal family, being in quotes independent from the political element, were received poorly when they went and visited certain parts of the world. So I know you're saying that they're independent, they represent the UK, but that representation can also be tarnished by the political side. So it begs the question, what's the point? Because in the Commonwealth, when the monarchy, was quite established, the British Empire had influence all around the world. A lot of those countries, now that have become independent, have no longer got the Queen as their head of state. And of all the countries out there now, I think it's only 14 or 15 that are still recognize the Queen as the head of state. And there's some of the smaller places. You're not talking the big boys in quotes, because they're no longer associating with the monarchy. I mean,
yes, but just as happened in, was it Belize, Bermuda? Where was it? Just recently, very recently, in the
yeah, where they had controversy, and now we're going to temporarily put direct rule in, or they've thought about
the other place where Prince, who was it, Prince William?
Oh,
who went across, and they are no longer Her Majesty's subjects.
Yeah,
they've gained their independence, if you like. Well, not gained their independence, but they've gone for a presidential system, which I'm arguing against, by the way. But it was very friendly, wasn't it? It was friendly. And Britain will always have a special relationship with these people. So, in that sense, it's good. It's just like Australia. Australia is no longer Her Majesty is no longer the head of state in Australia. But they love Her Majesty, they love the royal family, and anytime anybody shows up there, they're received very, very warmly.
I mean, that
means we have an extra level of communication that others don't have, and you want to get rid of it. It's like, why do you want to shoot yourself in the foot?
Well,
we have this extra level.
The question is, has it had its day? I'm not necessarily an advocate of removing it entirely. I am more looking at the cost benefit of it, and whether the extended monarchy needs to be funded or a narrower group of people. I mean, if we could have a replica of the Queen for the next 70 years, I'm happy with that, because she has been outstanding as the sovereign. But there's no guarantee of competence from whoever comes next. And because it's succession based on birth, it makes it rather difficult to pick the right candidate almost to lead the country in that realm. I mean, we were fortunate with the Queen. She has clearly excelled as being the Queen, as being the monarch. She's brilliant. So, if you could guarantee that the next in line of succession could do, even a 75% as good as the Queen, it would be outstanding. But there's no guarantee of that, because there's no track record. There's no, it's all literally based on inheritance almost, where, that they are being asked to do a role that they may not be equipped to do. And this is part of the problem.
I think that's going too far. This is called the crystal ball fallacy. When you're trying to take preemptive actions for something that hasn't occurred and you're not guaranteed is going to occur.
But there's no mechanism to resolve it. That's what I mean.
There's a mechanism. I explained already. When the head of government goes to the monarch and says, forget about it.
How many examples of that have there been?
Well, how many examples of really reckless monarchs have you had? I mean, the last time we've had a completely, utterly reckless and incompetent monarch, in my estimate, well, okay, there's Farouk, King Farouk of Egypt. He was pretty awful, but he frankly got what he wanted, which is he wanted the money and none of the responsibilities. When they booted him out, he was quite happy. He was happy with that. But the one I'm thinking about was, of course, Tsar Nicholas.
Oh.
Yeah, he was sacked the hard way. Right? But those are like, I'm not really sure it's the Constitution. Again, all right, we're talking about constitutional monarchs, and they're completely different from the sort of absolute monarchs. So in the Gulf states, we have the absolute monarchs, but that's why I didn't count them as being part of the people who, part of one of those countries that didn't suffer from the Arab Revolution, because, of course, in those countries, if you start any trouble, people show up and shoot you.
Yeah. They have absolute power and authority over everyone.
Absolute power and authority. The Sultan of Brunei, the same, is the absolute monarch.
There's no checks and balances in the way they rule. They could rule in a tyrannical way. Yeah.
So that's not what we have. And that's why, because we've got a constitutional monarchy, we can actually have a say, in who sits on the throne. So if push comes to shove and enough people are really unhappy, it filters through to the political, well, it should filter through to the political class. But increasingly, of course, we see that the political class is quite different from proletariat in this country and in the West in general. We've got a separate political class that just does what it wants, apparently, which is weird. But in the best of all situations, the best of all circumstances, what should happen is that a groundswell of opinion filters into the political class, affects the head of the government, which in turn tells the head of the government, look, got to do something, this monarch, no good, gotta go. And then
okay, well, I'm not sure that is something that would be invoked, because who would decide in what capacity the lines being crossed?
Let's say that someone like young William takes over for some funny reason. Someone else. Well, it doesn't matter.
Let's use
Harry.
What's her name? Harry. Yeah, Harry. Yeah.
Right. Everybody, unfortunately, dies in a car accident, like they do in movies.
Yeah. When some poor schmuck ends up being in the movie,
and then Harry, they go to America and they call Harry, they bring him over, he's going to be king. And he sets off well in the first couple of days, and people are like, well, that's odd. But they get used to it. And then all of a sudden we find out, no, what he's doing is turned Buckingham Palace into a bordello. And he's having all these parties, and he's dressed as a Nazi, and he's sniffing cocaine off the stomachs of prostitutes. And they're going to be like, what the heck is this? Everyone's going to be like, you know what? We've made a big mistake. No, thank you very much. So at that point in time, it'll definitely, I know there's no way that story is going to break, and he's not going to have to step down. It's absolutely impossible. So what happens is that the prime minister will go to him, go to the cabinet first of all. Cabinet holds a meeting. Man, we can't have this guy as the monarch, because otherwise we'll actually lose the monarchy itself. Like you're doing now, you're saying, hey, isn't it time for the monarchy to disappear? So people are going to go, no, let's not go that far, but let's get rid of this guy. And let's look for, whoever else, and maybe his son or his daughter.
Well, okay. Did you know that would be very difficult, actually, because did you know that even a figurehead sovereign can replace elected officials who are in charge?
I would like to think that this is theoretical. One thing about leadership is you turn around. Let's say you're leading a flock of sheep, and you're leading them down, sheeple, and you're leading them down a path, and you turn around and they're not there because they don't accept you as the leader. You can be a leader when people accept you as the leader. So if you were to say, okay, you're no longer the head of state, head of government, I'm going to put Rishi Sunak in place. The nation says, nah, that's that.
Well, let me give you an example. I'm reading this from an article from I'll give them their credit, futureofworking.com, and they mention about the sovereign can replace elected officials, and they actually state on their site that even though she is a figurehead of state, she can replace elected officials. And there are 3 times when Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II has decided to appoint the Prime Minister instead of allowing the elected officials to do so. This outcome happened in 1957, 1963, and 1974. She has even dismissed people in the past because of their desire to change something specific in the government. Now, I find that absolutely amazing that the Queen, even though she is the figurehead, could do something such as this. Now, I'm hoping that this article is right and it's not something that's made up, so I will caveat that. But if it is, then that is incredible, where on 3 separate occasions, she has appointed the prime minister instead of the elected officials doing so.
Well,
now,
I think
interesting.
Yes, I think if that had ever happened, and I don't know how it could have happened, and you and I have not heard about it. I think we would have heard about it. It would have been some kind of controversy that people would have been bringing up and saying, "This is what she did." If she did it, she would have done it within the full authority of the constitutional power, obviously, which means that she has the right to make those decisions, and she would have done it with more or less the authority of Parliament behind her, because don't forget, Parliament can always stand up to the Queen. So there was, during the Brexit negotiations and all, during the Brexit palaver, there was this time when they wanted to use Her Majesty to do something. Do you remember?
Yes, I do.
And I forget exactly what it was, but she had the right to do it. And she put her foot down and said, "No, thank you."
No.
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, this is what we mean by a canny monarch. She was like, "No, I'm not going to get involved. That's politics. Forget about it."
Yeah,
so
but that shows, I don't mind that, because she shows she's great in that respect. But there's no guarantee that the succession, Charles and beyond,
don't worry
are going to be.
When it happens, we'll deal with it. No, don't start dealing with it now. I'm doing.
But the thing is, the way that the monarchy is structured encourages only one person to stay in power for a long period. Should there be a fixed term, maybe?
No,
maybe
because
something
what we
like
want
that.
is continuity. The whole idea of the monarch's long reign, and why we wish every monarch a long reign, is that we don't want a 4-year term like we do with politicians. We want continuity. She's been my monarch all my life. I mean, when I was born, she was the Queen. And there's a good chance the way we're going that when I die, she'll still be the Queen. Right?
Don't say that.
It's just very comfortable. In fact, it's going to be a really horrible shock for a lot of people who think they don't admire Her Majesty. They're going to have a horrible shock when they wake up one day and they find that she's gone. Because I know they think very little of her. It's like, I was trying to remember the saying the other day that you don't know it's there until it's gone. I'm sure that's what's going to happen to a lot of people. It's like, "Oh, wow, what do you mean she's gone?" You know, maybe this is why in the old days there used to be a news blackout, and they let it leak so that it wasn't that much of a shock. By the time it was finally announced, people were more or less psychologically prepared for it.
I don't think that'll happen today.
24-hour news cycle thing, you stand every chance of just switching on the news, and out of nowhere. And that's just going to hit a lot of people really hard.
Oh,
really
indeed,
hard.
Indeed.
And then I think we'll see that all ideas about forget about the monarchy will be hilarious, because the British people actually, in my belief, British people love the monarchy. They don't know that they love her as much as they do.
No, indeed. I mean, I like I said, I mean, the question we're posing and we're discussing today is, has the British monarchy had its day? I'm of the opinion of the cost element. That's all, not her stature and how she's actually been head of state, because she has been, like I said, amazing. It's the cost element that can be revisited, and there's always ways of looking at that and perhaps rationalizing it a little better, especially some of the, like I said at the start of the program, the lesser royals who are receiving an income. And what duties do they provide for that income?
Yeah. Well,
you know, that's my argument. And obviously, being royal, you then have additional security and things like that, which obviously adds up for the taxpayer. So there is a lot of additional money needed to ensure the smooth transition of the whole thing.
I don't like the argument because it's not that much. I mean, in the big picture, 190 million, whatever it was, 300 million. I mean, you know, we're sending more to Ukraine to waste on battlefields over there than in a single week than we are spending on the monarchy for the entire year. And
Well,
out
yeah,
of
if
that,
you
like
put it
I
into
said,
context in that respect, then
yeah, it's piffling. About the minor royals, getting their snout into the trough.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I don't know that I'm happy about that, to be honest. Then the idea that the monarchy itself is not contributing materially to the income of the country. I mean, there's this chap called, what's his name now? Former Bank of England rate setter. He said our interest rates.
Oh, yeah.
A chap called Tim Besley. There's not Beasley, it's Besley.
Okay.
Wrote a paper, published a white paper or something, suggesting that hereditary leaders, that is monarchs, increase. He was looking at it as a swathe of countries, by the way, so it's not just the UK.
Yeah.
That hereditary monarchs are good for the economy because there is a tension between the monarchy representing the people, and not between the monarch, but the monarchy and the political class. In effect, our monarchy does what the voters are supposed to do, which is oversee the political class. But as you know, as every voter knows, we don't really have that power.
Yeah.
But the monarch can, by suggesting he or she is going to kick up a fuss if things get out of hand. And by kicking up a fuss, all Her Majesty really has to do is just to wonder out loud why we're spending so much money on, let's say, tea parties.
Yeah.
In Downing Street. That's all she has to do. She doesn't have to actually say anything more than that.
Yeah.
Or even
just a
have to
statement, but the fact she's made that statement has gravitas.
Has gravitas.
Yeah.
You see? So this chap said that it's 1.03% a year, every year. The difference between that and an executive-led government. Now, okay. I can't do the analysis on his figures. Who knows? Could be talking nonsense and angling for knighthood. I have no idea. But there we go. And a part of that is that monarchies are less corrupt and more trusting. And look at this. We've got in Europe, we've got Denmark, Sweden, Norway, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, right?
Yeah.
Having a king or queen. And these are all in that international international ranking of least corrupt countries. These are all higher than executive-led countries.
Well, hold on. We are not in that list, and neither is Spain. So what's the difference? They're both got monarchies.
Difference is that we are a little bit too corrupt compared to these other.
Yeah,
a little bit too corrupt compared to these others. So there is a break on, the monarchs. Obviously, the monarchy puts a break on it, but it's still a bit of a runaway train in the UK. So
indeed,
it'd be worse if there wasn't a monarchy.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're mindful. We're getting close to the top of the hour, so I've got another one actually, where because it's succession planning, and you get the next person. Mm-hmm. I mean, why can't? If I'm a great person, I've got a lot of influence, why can't I be king?
Okay, simple. It's simple. You don't have the grace of God, my friend.
Yeah, but you're born into it. That's
yeah, well, that's because that's God's grace, which you haven't got. So it's just that simple. You can't have everything you want in life. You just got to learn to live with it. Sorry.
See, that doesn't make it right in a society of today.
Well,
personally.
There's nothing you can do about it. So there you go.
What about the diversity angle, where you've got this lineage of people all from one family? Then there isn't a lot of diversity that represents the population. Unlike in this instance where we did have
diversity hire. Well, that's where you're going with it. We had a diversity hire, but then you all got on her case, and you wouldn't give the poor woman any slack, and she naffed off back to where she came from. And who can blame her? I mean, I sent you. Did I send you? I think I did. I sent you some material showing how the same dress as worn by the Duchess of Cambridge, which is the Prince William's
Kate. Yeah.
Prince William's
wife.
Friend.
Yeah. Wife, she's his wife, yes.
Yeah, Prince's wife. And the same dress on her, and how on the Duchess of Cambridge, it was a thing of beauty and this and that, and how on what's her name,
Meghan Markle.
Oh, what was it? Duchess of Sussex, actually.
Yes.
The Duchess of
Is she
Sussex.
still? No, she's not anymore. They've
She
had
doesn't
to
use it. She
announce
is.
that.
No,
I beg your pardon.
She is, but she doesn't use it.
Ah.
She actually is the Duchess of Sussex, but she doesn't.
Okay.
She doesn't use it. It was horrible, and the baby bump on Duchess of Cambridge, Kate, was described in glowing terms, and with her it was described in really horrible.
But that's the media.
Terms.
The media are shocking in that manner.
All I'm trying to say is, if you want diversity, you've got to be welcoming of diversity. You can't go around lambasting diversity and then saying that we want diversity. Who wants to show? I actually felt when she was getting married to this guy, I was like, I don't think she knows what she's letting herself in for, because she didn't.
Yeah.
She didn't know what she was letting herself in for, and I think eventually they will make it back. They will make it back. But
I think so.
I think in the long run, and she's making a very nice statement, because on the birth certificates of both her children, she's not Duchess of Sussex, and their titles are not used either. And she seems to. So I think she's a true Republican, basically.
Okay, interesting.
I don't know why she married a prince then. Maybe she loved him. I don't know.
Indeed, interesting.
Oh, I just want to say one thing before you go on.
Yeah, because we've reached the end of the show. I want to get to your conclusion, really, on our topic. So
yeah, I just want to say one thing, which is that when I mentioned earlier that today is Her Majesty's official birthday, we are recording this on the 11th of June 2022. In case people were wondering.
Yes. Okay. One final thought while we end. So, in your opinion, has the British monarchy had its day?
I don't think so.
Okay. Wonderful. Unfortunately, we have reached the end of the show for another week.